Hi everyone, thanks for joining in another episode of D Industry. In this episode, we have a very special guest with us. Hi Bhaskar, welcome to D Industry.
Hi Tejj, thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much, Bhaskar, for joining in. So, if you could share your design journey with our viewers out there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Bhaskar. I'm basically trained as architect from NIT Raipur, and then I found my interest in design field, and that's where I got some guidance around in my at my internship, and I got awareness about this design, and eventually I joined this design industry as a UX designer, and then I have been working since 6 years in this field.
That's really wonderful, Bhaskar. So, what made you pursue design since you were working on architecture as well? And I know personally that you are like a killer architect. So, what made you change these fields?
So when it was in my during my degree too, so it's around we have to create sheets which are there for architecture drawings, and that's where there were different subjects where we have to learn views, details, and even in construction. So that's where whenever I looked at it, when I had to represent something, I find it very encouraging to look or do things which are completely different. So that's where when I started doing my sheets and all, I got this inspirations from especially movies, and that's how I tried, and that's where I think Marvel shaped it up really well. And inspiring from those, I created my building construction drawings into it, and that's where I got to know more about how to represent something, and eventually that actually triggered the discussions around how can I be enjoying that kind of stuff. And eventually, digital design came into my awareness when I was in my internship, architectural internship. And I was asked to do more of details. And then eventually, even the presentation for clients, and all, I used to work on those things. So that's where I got to know about this digital design, especially. And then when I wanted to move into that field, so this was in 2016, I guess. I couldn't find anybody out there who could help me. How could I do it? Because there was only one way, which is to get a master's from any of these design schools, which eventually I think even if I tried hard, I couldn't get it due to this high intense competition around that field. And yeah, so with that, I applied through internships and got into my first internship and eventually started my journey there.
That's really wonderful. Thanks for sharing your journey with us, Bhaskar. So, what is your take on current industry, and what do you think? Since you also mentor a lot of people who are doing a lot of career transitions, so what are few things that you have observed and you could share it with our audience out there?
I think the whole industry, not only design, but as a tech industry, it evolved a lot in the last 5 years. And this is what most of the people miss it out, because as technology is growing, there are multiple things that would come which would affect this design decisions altogether, which is why down back in 5 years or 6 years, it's like because the design industry was booming, and eventually there were more and more talent coming into the industry, and there were people like startups who were willing to take that risk. But right now there are multiple domains and multiple tools which are there to support this design of a startup for a small scale startup, and which is why I think it's not what we call it as a visual design which is taken care of, but it's the ecosystem thinking or systems thinking that really matters, even if the people are trying to get into this industry. So that's where it's slightly different, and even that observations is pretty much valid, because from the last 1 year there are very, or I could say very less fresher roles which are being hired even by startups, because startups are also looking at people who have executional skills right from day one, rather than giving them training for 3 months or 6 months and then eventually giving those real time problems to solve. So this shift is currently happening and we are actually looking at it.
So how do you think one can differentiate themselves?
I think if you look at the current what do we say? Why does a design school provide a master degree, which would take 1 or 2 years, right? So it's because you are learning those skills and then eventually exposed to actually work on some assignments as projects, where you could learn those nitty gritties of how constraints work in the industry, right? So that only comes when you are in that school environment where people would give. Whereas right now, I think there is a shift which is prevailing, that UX can be learned in under 3 months or 6 months, which is partially, I mean, I would say 20% true, where in that 6 months you would learn part of it, how to do stuff, but you won't get that exposure of what real constraints would be there in the industry and how to tackle that from the day one. So that tackling those problems from the day one gives you a competitive edge. And if you could learn that when you are trying to learn the UX, and it would take some time, right? It's not a 6 months game altogether, because you're if you look at our educational system, we actually spent 4 years for a bachelor degree and then 2 years for a master degree. And we eventually bet that we would learn those skills. But surprisingly, this UX field, there are people who are selling those courses for 3 months and 6 months. Yeah, I mean, which is slightly different, right? Which is not the main domain. So I think understanding what it takes and then learning and whatever it takes, if you have committed that you would be in this field, it would take a lot of time and you would sequentially learn. So it's not a 6 months course how they do it. It's an ever long journey that I learn new things every day. So it's a continuous journey. There is no fixed timeline for it to learn it. How you learn it really matters when you are trying to apply as a career, as a fresher in this career.
That's very beautifully said, Bhaskar. So, in terms of you, what are few portfolio tips that people should have there in their mind?
I think the first tip is you shouldn't look at any portfolios available online. Those will just bias your thoughts which are there, primarily because if we understand what is a UX case study, it's about you as a person showcasing your skills, what you are really good at, and what have you achieved in your portfolio, rather than what process did you do when you are solving a problem. So that's where, if you try to look at a case study, you are getting biased towards, okay, I have to have those process in place to showcase my skills as a designer, but that's not true. So if you have learned something as a process and you have executed, someone has put out their case study there because they have prioritized what skills to put, and that's how it's shaped as a case study in the existing any domain. Now if you look at that, that is only half or maybe 40% of process what he did. Rest of the things are there back, but he didn't prioritize because of the person who is viewing at it cannot give attention time of all the 4 or 5 months journey that he has put into that problem solving. So essentially, it's like you need to be aware of what processes are there and what problem you are solving and what impact that is being created. So if you could follow this framework and then just prioritize those components to elevate your skills, it would be a wonderful case study. Need not to match with any of the available things that are there online.
That's a wonderful take. So, let's talk about what's happening in the current trend, which is the AI integrating in design. So, what's your take
Right.
on that?
I think AI is really a helpful tool if you know all the processes. So let's say, I mean, if you look at any problem statement that comes from the industry, you need to identify what is the core problem that is causing it. So there are multiple ways that you could do it. You could do it via visual, you could do it via research, you could do it via interaction to solve that problem. But the inner mechanics lies which one to take in the given constraints of time and resources available. So that's where it put you as a designer, as a better designer than everyone else. So if you have to choose that, okay, I have to approach it from a visual design perspective. So you need to have multiple things that you have done earlier that would give you the decision making or identifying those nuances when you read about that problem statement. And once you execute it, so that's where all the things. Now when AI is comes into place, if you know what to do, then AI is really helpful. But if you don't know what to do and you just give those random commands to it, it would completely derail your whole process, and it would give you a 360-degree opposite results where you cannot control it after one point of time. So you have to again restart from scratch, which is counterproductive. So if you are really sure about what you know, what is the outcome, and what are the direction that you want to know, then AI is really helpful. But if not, it would be derailing you very backwards, eating your own time.
So to conclude in the end, how did all this journey, like the 5 years of self exploration into the field, has helped you to become a
Mhm.
better designer? And do you think if you had pursued masters, this case would have been the same, or would it have been different? Since you have also applied for a lot of masters programs as well, since I know, so that's why asking this question, because this is like a primary fundamental question that a lot of young designers are like, whether should we go on a self-explanatory way or go for a masters program.
Yeah. So self-explanatory way works really well when you get the right people who you can be mentored under. So that's where I want to share that journey where when I was working, I think almost 2.5 years back, when I had a 2.5 years of experience in the field, I was also confused like, yeah, is it just doing screens and then delivering it every day and then just iterating on it, because the decision making was completely towards the development team or the client team. But even if I had, if I knew what was right, convincing that in terms of, or communicating that in terms of how can it be better was the challenge which I have been facing. And I think that's where I usually encourage, because it worked for me, I usually encourage people to just attend all these events which are there regarding design. And then that's where you'll get to meet people who could open doors for you even in when you are learning, right? So that's where I think when I was starting, I I went to Microsoft. I think there was a design event there. I met four people, and then from that four people, he was I would mention his name, Prasad Kantamneni. So he was the person who gave a different opinion or different direction about what is UX. It was so relatable, but it was equally what do we say, afraid or frightening of what he told, that how UX really works. And after, I think after 1.5 year post that, that's where I got, or maybe 6 months later, they launched online courses around UX. So I was part of it, and that's where I learned what is UX under him. And it was not self-explanatory, but it was purely experimental. And within one first course was, I think, communicating how what your design decisions movement, and that eventually changed how I talked at my organization where I was part of it. So it's like just iterate on what is right, and then how you explain it really matters. And once that module is done and I started doing implementing it in my work, people respected me, like, okay, if Bhaskar has said it and there is no other way around, right? That respect has been built over because I could communicate it. So that's the first skill, and the thing which actually mattered in the journey. and eventually all those assignments and everything paid off, which is why I have this clarity of okay, what to do when. And coming to masters, I think even if you do masters, if this is the guidance that you receive at any point of time, you could be in the same parallel area where you could take decisions on your own and communicate your design decisions very effectively. So it doesn't matter if you have MDes or not, but if you have the right skill set, and when I was doing, I didn't have that mindset of having a certificate for that UX training. I have to learn it, and once the skills are acquired, anyway, that rest of the thing doesn't matter.
Very wonderfully said, Bhaskar. So yeah, on a conclusion note, what would be your three favorite book recommendations to our viewers out there?
So yeah, I think this is the recent one, but yeah. So for the books, which really helped me shape all my thinking was again Don Norman's book, Everyday Things. That I think really opened up what are the different types of terminology that we need to speak. Then there was one more book, I don't remember its name. Don't Think, I guess, by this person, where it was really incredible of knowing how things work in and how those concepts really come forward even right now after this evolution. And the latest book is Notes of Wisdom, where I think if this book, so yeah, when I was preparing for masters, I couldn't get what to, so this is crazy, like for these master's programs, and the entrance test would have not only one field but different fields of knowledge that you need to gain. And that's where there was few so resources which were hard to get, going through Facebook groups and going through many other social media channels and getting them and reading all those content was way hard to get minimal things done. So that's where when I read this book of Notes of Design or Notes of Wisdom, so that's where it's very evident that if this book was there back then, it would have helped me fast track and focus my time more on what is required rather than exploratory thing. So it would have saved so much time, and I think I recommend people to who is just thinking that design as a field should read this book.
Thank you so much, Bhaskar, for sharing all these wonderful recommendations with us and sharing such beautiful journey with so many great insights. And folks who are watching this video, the whole purpose of creating the series is to introduce you to different designers who are transitioning and making great careers in design. So I'll be attaching the links like LinkedIn, ADP List, and other mentorship platforms where Bhaskar is mentoring folks down below in the description. So please check it and reach out to Bhaskar for any of your doubts in your career transition or your career journey. So with that, thank you so much, Bhaskar, once again for joining us in the industry.
Thank you, Tej, for having me here.
Thank you.